If you're looking forward to freeing up space and making things easier for Thanksgiving, this crockpot sides video is for you. They are so delicious and you don't even need an oven. Personally, when I think about using the crockpot for Thanksgiving, it's not even so much that the crockpot is easier. It's more based off of the fact that it's just convenient. It frees up room over on the stove, in the stove, the place where you really have the turkey and the ham. So that's why I like having the crock pot, because it's easy. You can throw stuff in there. You can forget about it, set it there. You don't have to worry about it all day long. All right, friends, we are going to make this delicious mashed potato. This is not like your standard mashed potato, okay? This is the kind of mashed potato that you dream about for days later. That's what we're making. I'm making a half recipe because it is not Thanksgiving yet. I don't know if you've realized that as you're watching it, but we're gonna be making this again for Thanksgiving. So I don't need quite as much right now. So the first thing I'm gonna do is peel these potatoes. I've got about 2.5-ish pounds. If I were making a full recipe, then I would use 5 pounds of potatoes. But when I say this is not your standard mashed potato, truly not your standard mashed potato. Now, I have a question for you as I am doing this. Do you always have mashed potatoes at Thanksgiving? I feel like that's kind of a standard thing to have, but I also know that there's, you know, a sweet potato, which we're also going to be making, very popular side dish for Thanksgiving. And do you have both? Do you have both sweet potato and regular potato? Because I'm not hating if you do. I love both of them so much. So I'd be happy to have both. All right, so I'm just gonna cut these into large pieces, okay? I don't have a certain size or anything. We're just like you were gonna boil them, like normal mashed potatoes. Now, if you were making the full recipe, this will be a decent amount for sure. All right, all in here. Looking good. Y'all, our grass is so confused at this time of year. We have Bermuda that goes brown in the winter, and it was cold for like a week, or cold-ish for a week, and then it's been hot for a week, and our Bermuda is green again, or patches of it are. It's out of control. Okay, so to my crock pot, I'm gonna add a couple of cups of water. So just like you were gonna be cooking them over on the stove, let's do 2 cups. That should be enough. All right, let's put it into the insert here. I'm gonna add some whole cloves of garlic. Just pop those in, you'll find them later. And that was 4, that's good. It's gonna be pretty garlicky. All right, and a few teaspoons of salt. So keep in mind, this is just like as if you were boiling over on your stovetop. You want a good amount of salt. That's gonna bring out the awesome flavor of the potatoes. Okay, lid on. You can cook this on high for 4 hours or low for 6 to 8. We're gonna go high for 4 hours because of the time that we're at. So go with whatever amount of time you have. There we go. While the potatoes continue to cook, I'm gonna take an onion and just start to slice it. I'm gonna make some relatively thin slices. And honestly, my daughter and I might be the only ones that actually eat this part of the recipe, but I'm making it anyway, okay? So, you know what? This little outer layer needs to come off. So you might wanna make more than I'm making, obviously, if you're gonna be serving more people. But like I said, might just be me and my daughter with this part. We're gonna make some caramelized onions to go on the top. And I feel like not only do they taste amazing, but they look really, really pretty. So we'll see. My husband might get a wild hair and have some. Okay, now this is pretty easy to do. We're just gonna take these over and just cook them up in a pan really quickly. But with that, I want some thyme and some rosemary. Ideally, you would also have sage. My sage looked awful, so I had to throw it out. I've actually been wanting to grow sage on my indoor garden, but I can't, it's not available through Garden yet. So I wonder if that's just not one that they have, or I don't know how sage grows. Maybe it just can't grow on an indoor garden, but I have to buy it, unfortunately. And it just, half of the time when I get it, it goes bad in just a couple of days. But let's pull some thyme and rosemary off of the garden now. So we don't need a ton just because of the amount of onions that we're making. So a couple tablespoons maybe. And I'm just gonna take the thyme leaves and just pull them off of the stem. Really easy to do. And then with the rosemary, I'm gonna pull off the leaves and then chop them up just a bit. Okay, maybe we'll go ahead and chop up the thyme just a smidge since we have it here. Okay, that's good to go, settled. Let's get these onions going. All right, the first thing I'm gonna add here is 2 tablespoons of butter. Okay, I'm just on a medium heat right now, melting this butter. I'm gonna go ahead and add in the onion. So just take all of this and it can go into the pan. All right, these are gonna cook, oh, there's the paper. Don't want that. I call it the paper, but it's the outer edge, you know what I mean. All right, so these are gonna cook for about 10 minutes over here. They're really gonna caramelize. They're gonna soften up and then caramelize, and then we're gonna add some chicken broth, chicken stock, bone broth. You guys know we use bone broth here. And then we'll add that thyme and rosemary as well. And really, these are just gonna be so good. Okay, while the onions are cooking, I'm gonna make my best attempt to drain out the water. I guess I should probably test them first. Woo! And make sure they're fork tender. We'll use this knife tender. Oh yeah, oh man, those are cooked perfectly. All right, so I feel like I need another individual to help me with this, but we'll see how it's gonna go. Okay, we did all right. We haven't lost any potatoes. Good deal. I think I covered this other camera the whole time though. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this to warm because we don't need them cooking anymore. All right, while the onions are over there working, let's mash up these potatoes, which is really easy to do because they are like perfect consistency. So good. So easy to mash. I'm gonna add in 4 tablespoons of butter and let that melt. Let's kind of get that nestled so it'll start to melt pretty quickly. Let's add a little bit of salt to these. And I actually didn't add salt to the onions. Let's do that real quick, just a touch while I'm thinking about it. Now you guys know that normally when a recipe calls for sour cream, we sub out and use Greek yogurt. I have this in my fridge though, and I can't think of a time when I'm gonna use it before it goes bad. So let's go ahead and actually use sour cream in this recipe. We need about 1/4 cup. And you can always add more if you feel like you need to make it a little more creamy. Let's save this spoon actually, because we might need it. And then heavy cream, about a third cup. I'm gonna say about 1/3 cup. We'll start there, see what that looks like, kind of start to mix that together. We've got that butter in there too. That's actually nice and melty now. This is hot, careful. I mean, this is a creamy mashed potato. Yes, ma'am. Actually could have easily made this amount in my smaller crock pot, but I was using it for something else that you guys are gonna see. Okay, this is like, it's completely mashed. It was so easy to mash. All right, I do want to taste it though, make sure we're good. See if we need anything, but we're gonna be adding some other stuff to it too, so I don't wanna go crazy on adding seasoning. Yes, ma'am. All right, let's just put this back in here so it can stay warm. Stir the onion. Now, the other day, what was I making? Mac and cheese. My other Thanksgiving sides video with amazing sides, not crock pot sides, other sides, very, very good. Anyway, I said in that video that I had pulled out this Gruyere and I couldn't remember what it was for. This is what it's for, okay? So we're going to go ahead and shred up this Gruyere cheese because we're not gonna use quite the whole thing. If you are not familiar with Gruyere, you're missing out. All right, keep an eye on your onions. I have the hardest time opening. What is the best way to open cheese like this? I don't know. Apparently rip at it is the best way. All right, so I do need to cut this in half just so it will fit here in my cheese grater. Okay, so we only need about 3/4 of a cup for the amount that we're making. If you're making the full recipe, you need 1.5 cups. So I'm gonna go ahead and shred this and then dump in what I've shredded, which I think is about half. And then we will shred the rest and just keep it in the fridge because, I mean, you don't let Gruyere go to waste, okay? I mean, so good. All right, go ahead and put that in the crock pot. It's gonna start to melt. So we'll just put the lid on and let that melt, and then we'll stir it all together. And I'm gonna go ahead and just finish shredding this so I can put it all away. We're starting to get that color that we want on these onions, that nice caramelized color. Just let them cook. At this point, you know, I've got a couple that are still looking a little raw, and I definitely don't want that. So I'm gonna let them cook a tad longer, maybe 3-4 minutes or so, until we add in some chicken broth. You can also use, or we're using bone broth, obviously. You can also use a white wine, and that'll help to add really great flavor as well. Totally up to you, whichever one you want. Okay, just judging by the way that this looks, I'm not even sure that we need any chicken broth. These look nice and done. So I'm just gonna add in our herbs that we cut, or chopped rather, and just let those add amazing flavor there. Just takes a couple seconds. You can smell, oh my goodness, so good. All right, now I'm gonna take this and just transfer it to a little bowl because I'm not sure that we're gonna mix it in at this point. They might just get served to the people that want them. Now, if you really want to add in some of that chicken broth, feel free to do so, but I'm good with how these look. We've got crock pot Gruyere mashed potatoes.
Ooh.
Now there's caramelized onions in my serving, so you don't have to put them in yours. They're over here to the side. Our daughter will probably love them.
Our son has
Yeah, our
been
son will
eating
probably like
onions
it
more
too.
and more.
Yeah, you're the only one. We have to adjust all the recipes. Okay. Do you want your own fork?
Yeah, well, I'll use this one here.
Okay. So I obviously am getting it with onions. They're mixed in, but I didn't mix it into the crock pot.
So it's Gruyere, some heavy cream, or
Yeah, Gruyere, sour cream, heavy cream.
a little bit of salt to taste.
Yeah, yeah. You're missing out not having the onions. They add a great element of flavor.
All right, let me do one with onions.
That's cheese right there.
Cheese, okay.
That's a cheese. It does add good flavor. You have to admit it.
Oh, it does. And it adds a little smokiness too. I'm okay for 1 or 2 bites, but I just can't go throughout.
It's good though, right?
Yes.
The mashed potatoes are delicious.
Yeah.
They're a great
Creamy.
consistency. There's no lumps or anything, which I typically find whenever I make mashed potatoes over there, they usually aren't as creamy as this.
Agreed.
This is a great way to make them.
Yeah. I just feel like I'm having a flashback to my childhood. My mom had 4 boys, and I've never been told, but I'm sure we complained about the lumpiness of our mashed potatoes because they were super creamy that I remember. But that's harder.
This recipe is delicious though. Love Gruyere cheese. I mean, anytime we can have Gruyere with something, we're gonna have it. But even if you skip the Gruyere, these are still good even without that. It's just such good flavor, and the creaminess of them, so good. Yeah. Definitely make your mashed potatoes in the crock pot this Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right. You didn't talk about that. So you boiled them.
Everything was in the crock pot.
You mashed them in the crock pot.
Yes. Cooked them in the crock pot. Everything. I don't think we've ever done mashed potatoes in the
No,
crock pot.
it was unusual when I looked to see what was under the
Yeah.
lid.
Yeah.
And that
So
was
easy.
easier, you
So
think, because
easy.
you don't have to stand over
Yep.
it for.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. I have a confession to make. I made this recipe yesterday. It was fine, but it can be improved upon. So we're making it again today. Yesterday I made this recipe with arborio rice because I was out of the wild grain rice. I used it all last week in an amazing recipe, but it didn't work quite as well with arborio. I think you could still use it, but I got highly distracted and left it in the crock pot too long. So we're gonna attempt this again, okay? So I'm gonna use a 3/4 of a cup of this wild grain rice. All right, so this is going into the crock pot. And to that, we need to add a can of Great Northern beans. I am going to drain and rinse these beans. All right, all of those can go in. Also add a can of chicken broth if you want. I'm using bone broth and we're gonna be using 14 ounces. So if you have a can, I'm pretty sure there are 14 ounces, but that's what we're gonna just measure ours out because you guys know we love our bone broth. All right, that's about 14 ounces. All right, all of that can go in. Now, because I'm using bone broth instead of chicken broth, I am gonna add a touch of salt. And we have some tree guys here that are about to work on our trees, so I need to get moving on this because it's about to be real loud. All right, we're gonna cook this on high for about 2 hours. If it takes any longer than 2 hours, we'll come back probably another hour or so. I wanna see that the rice is starting to cook a little bit before I add in the other ingredients. But I'm thinking around 2 hours on high. If you're doing low, it's probably more like 4 hours or so, especially with wild grain rice. This next part I need to do without sound. We have some tree guys that are cutting down some of our overgrown branches that are kind of overlapping our house, so it's a little chaotic. But all we're gonna do real quick is cut up some frozen green beans, any kind of green bean that you love, and then we're gonna add about a 1/4 cup-ish or so of pesto. I might add a little more just because we love pesto, and then let it continue to cook until that rice is done. One thing that is really unique about this rice, it is very forgiving. We actually made a last minute decision to go to our niece's volleyball game. So I just turned the crock pot to keep warm. I mean, it was literally a last minute decision to the point where we couldn't even taste test, nothing like that. We didn't have time. I turned the crock pot to keep warm, and I literally thought to myself, I am not making this recipe 3 days in a row, because inevitably just having it sit there in the crock pot for 3 hours while we're gone is not gonna be good for this rice. And surprisingly, it's fine. The rice is a little mushier than maybe I would want it to be, but I'm shocked at how forgiving this was. It's really good flavor with that pesto in there. It was really good flavor with the arborio rice too. It just didn't hold its texture quite as well. But I think that this is one of those, if you want a couple of beans, if you want some rice, if you want an easy side to throw together in the crock pot, this is such an easy way to do it. And then that pesto kind of elevates all the flavors. I personally love wild grain rice. So I like the fact that it's a little crunchier than regular rice, but you know, obviously use whichever one you prefer. I would just say if you're not gonna use a wild grain, then you need to watch it very, very closely. But the flavors are all really good here. And I personally really appreciate the different textures that are available. All right, let's make a crock pot sweet potato casserole. We're gonna start by peeling the sweet potatoes. Now, historically, what I've heard from people is that they don't make sweet potato casserole in the crock pot because you can't get a crispy topping like you can in the oven, and that's actually not true. I'm gonna show you how to do that in this video. We've made this multiple times in the crock pot, and every time I get a nice crispy topping on the sweet potato casserole. So don't be afraid to do that. Just gonna peel all of these. I don't know how many I wanna do, to be honest. I have some white sweet potatoes as well. I thought they were purple ones. I bought white ones on accident. So I may use some white ones, we'll see. Technically, you want like 4 large size sweet potatoes. These are small, so this is more like probably 2.5 small. So I'm gonna need some more. All right, let me handle this boring part and then we'll be back. I have a bunch of them peeled. This is probably equal to 4 large sweet potatoes. As we chop them up, I'm gonna go ahead and just place them straight into the crock pot. I'm gonna cut them smaller than I do the regular potatoes because we're not gonna cook these in any water. They're all gonna get cooked together in like its mixture, its sauce. So, is that what you call it? What would you call it? The other ingredients that go into this. I'm blanking on words. Surprise, surprise. So a little bit smaller pieces just so they cook a little easier without a bunch of extra liquid. All right, tell me in the comments while I do this, what are your Thanksgiving plans? And also I wanna know, not only what are your Thanksgiving plans, but are these normal plans? Are these the same plans that you typically have? Do you go to the same place every year? Do you hang with the same family or friends every year? How does that work for you? We are actually gonna be having Thanksgiving here. It'll be, my mom is gonna come over and we're gonna invite a couple of our other friends that have become like family. They're as close to us as many of our family members are. So we're gonna ask if they would like to come over. They actually don't have family that lives anywhere, even in the state. So we love to hang out with them. Sweet, sweet friends of ours. We have a couple friends like that. So we like to do Thanksgiving like so. That's kind of how I grew up is, yeah, we always had family over, but then there was those few people that they'd been a part of our lives for so long that they feel like family, even though they're not technically blood related. I love that. One thing we've realized, especially over the past couple of years, is that family doesn't necessarily have to be blood related, that it can just be people that you do life with and they become like your actual family, people that you can depend on, count on. We have some really, really awesome friends like that. Okay, you know what? I am gonna cut this recipe in half because this really is gonna be a lot for our family and I still have more to do. So these other ones, I'll actually cut up and roast them because I love a good roasted sweet potato just to add to lunches or even breakfast with like a bowl with eggs and stuff. So good. I'm looking at this thinking, oh my gosh, we're gonna be eating sweet potatoes for days. Now, if you're making the full recipe, then you want a full stick of butter to go in here. Mine's about half, so we're gonna go with a half stick of butter. So what is that, 4 tablespoons? And we need to melt this. I'm gonna go ahead and just pour all of that butter over the sweet potatoes. Okay, and then we need about an 1/8 cup of brown sugar. Now, obviously, if you're making that full recipe, then you're gonna want a 1/4 cup. About a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. About a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now, I personally love sweet potato casserole with almond extract. I think it's delicious, but I know some people don't love almond extract. So if you're nervous about that, skip out on that and just go with your regular vanilla extract. We do need to add a little bit of cinnamon. I'm gonna go with maybe a 1/2 teaspoon or so. And then toss that together. And then I need to run the dishwasher while this stuff is cooking. All right, so we just toss all of this like so, making sure our sweet potatoes get nice and coated. So you have some liquid in there, but not a ton. So that's why I didn't want to make the pieces too big. All right, this one is gonna cook on low for about 4 to 5 hours. And then we'll come back in and we'll make the kind of like streusel topping. Is that what you would call it? The brown sugar topping. And we'll add it to it and I'll show you how you get it nice and crispy. It's been about 4 hours with the sweet potatoes. So I'm gonna take my potato masher and just mash all of this together. Another thing you could do is if you want to get out your immersion blender, you could use that. I might do that. We'll see how easily these mash. They're mashing really easily at this point. Okay, let's just try it. I honestly don't know how much better it's gonna get than what the potato masher did, but why not? It's right here. This is nice and smooth, but I'm gonna take a spatula and kind of wipe the sides, mainly because, I mean, it's splattered all over the sides, but it just looks prettier once you put that topping on if you don't have that splatter up the sides, because we're gonna be serving straight out of this. So I want it to look nice and decent, but that's so easy to do with your spatula. Now we need to mix the stuff that is gonna go in this. So let me just set that to the side. I need a tablespoon of butter, but it needs to be melted. But remember, I did a half recipe, so you would need 2 tablespoons of butter. These pecans or walnuts, I say this every single time, without fail. We're just gonna chop some up and they're gonna go in there. We need about a 1/4 cup. The baggie method makes this really easy, but I just didn't wanna get a baggie out. You can also just buy them chopped already. These are pecans. Yeah, these are pecans. I question it every time and then I look at them and I'm like, no, that's what they are. That's about a 1/4 cup. Add it to the butter. I'm adding in a couple of tablespoons of flour. So it's really about an 1/8 cup. So just toss that in. Let me do just a touch more, just a touch. And 1 tablespoon of brown sugar and a little extra. Mix all of this together. Now, personally, I think the easiest way to do this is to sprinkle it on with your hands. But if you're having people over, maybe you want to use a spoon, it's up to you. My hands are clean. So we're just going to sprinkle this all over the top, kind of trying to evenly distribute as much as possible. Make sure you get all the way to the edges. If you like more of this topping, go ahead and double up on that too, because you can get a nice, crisp, like thick layer of topping. Totally up to you. I mean, this is gonna just cover the top, but you could also make more. I am not gonna judge because we all know that's our favorite part. So here's the trick. Lid goes on. Leave your lid on for about 20 to 30 minutes or so. Let kind of the butter melt. Then you're gonna take your lid off and just let it sit 10, 15, 20, 30, however long you really want, but you need at least 15 minutes and it's gonna help this form that crust that we love on a sweet potato casserole. Sweet potato casserole in the crock pot. I actually let this sit in the crock pot without the lid for about 30 minutes because we ended up eating dinner. So we're actually gonna have this tomorrow with our dinner, but I wanted to go ahead and make it today just to get it out of the way. So the longer you let it sit without the lid on, the harder that crust is gonna become on the top, and that's kind of what you want. Yes. The other tip I've heard that I've never tried before is to take a paper towel or a towel and put it underneath your lid and then set that on, and it kind of absorbs the moisture. Ooh. So that's a good tip too. Yeah. That is a good tip. So I haven't tried it, but a lot of you have actually said that here, so. Maybe if we make that for Thanksgiving. Yeah. We'll do that one. On actual Thanksgiving. Yeah, yeah. Our dog wants some. You want some? She loves sweet potato. She does, that's right. Mm-hmm. That's good. It's so good. I do think I would double the crust. There's a lot of the sweet potato mixture. I think the crust needs double the amount the recipe calls for. Do you think it wouldn't work
if you layered like a lasagna, because the crust is so good with
No,
it.
I don't think it would, because I don't think it would actually get a crust in the middle. You'd get like a brown sugar layer, which could actually be a good idea. Hold on, you might be onto something. Maybe not a full crust layer, but taking the sweet potato mixture, blending it all together, taking half of it out, putting some brown sugar down, then putting a layer, then doing the crust. You might be onto something there.
You're welcome, everybody.
It's good though. It's really good.
Sweet potato is so good.
And again, the main reason for this is not necessarily that the crock pot makes it easier, but that it frees up your oven. Because if you are hosting, you've got people over, you've got like, you know, a 675-pound turkey in there and a ham and whatever else, you know, somebody brings, and they want you to keep it warm in your oven. I mean, all the things. So this is a great option for sure. It's just straight dessert for us.
It's so good.
Oh, you got the last bit of crust. It is really good though.
Sorry.
Friends, this video is not sponsored, but I did want to mention two things. If you're looking for gifts, now is the time to buy them. Inglenook candles are my absolute favorite. They also have bath and body type of products in their store, but these candles are phenomenal. I'm telling you, you won't find a better one. They're single pour, which means they don't lose their scent even all the way to the bottom. Grab those. I do have a code for 15% off in my description box. And also right now, I believe through the 19th, the Geometry House towels are 35% off with my code. So you don't want to miss that, because that's a way bigger discount than I normally have with the 15%. So grab these. They make fantastic gifts. Our verse today comes from 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hit that subscribe button if you're new here, if you want to get even more videos just like this. But even more importantly than that, check out the video that I have listed above, because there are some incredible recipes in here that you're going to love. Have a great week.